Well, now turning to Canada, where the French-Canadian province of Quebec will hold provincial elections next week. A recent poll shows that a separatist party known as the PQ is heading for victory. Quebec has been paralyzed by massive student protests and social unrest over the past few months. Now, students have pledged to oust current Premier Jean Charest out of office. With the wind of change blowing, could Quebec be heading towards a separation from English-speaking Canada? Well, let's cross over and talk to our correspondent, Joshua Blakeney, who has more on the story. Hi, Joshua. Well, how close is it? Is it likely that Quebec would actually separate from the rest of Canada?
Hi, Marcia. Well, we have to remember that the resistance to the austere and draconian policies towards education are really a symptom of a growing discontent, a swirling discontent in Quebec with the kind of prevailing neoliberal philosophy that's being imposed upon the people of Quebec by the Jean Charest government. Now, many people in Quebec will view that ideology as being kind of foreign to Quebec and will consider that Quebec independence as being able to facilitate a more socialistic, a more collectivist economic model. And so I think that there are certainly some people in Quebec who will be resisting the policies of the Charest government with the intention of then allowing it to develop and morph into Quebec separatism. Now, in the 1970s and 1980s, Quebec separatism was highly popular among the populace in Quebec. Indeed, in 1987, they almost attained a kind of quasi-sovereignty within Canada. And so we have to consider the fact that those who are spearheading this resistance to the hikes in tuition fees are people who are French-speaking. They're ethnically Quebec predominant, ethnically Quebecois predominantly, and thus it is highly probable that those political parties who promote a separatist agenda, like the Parti Québécois and the Quebec Solidaire Party, which is even more to the left of them, that they'll harness that political capital and perhaps use it to pursue independence.
Now, Joshua, why have we been seeing more, it appears, more social unrest, political unrest coming out of Quebec compared to the rest of Canada?
Well, this is the thing. The people of Quebec have a kind of worldview that they're kind of colonized, that they're a kind of colonized people because most of Canada is English-speaking, and they're kind of ethnically distinct. Many people in Quebec are. There's 7 million people in Quebec. Of course, there's immigrants and so on, but many people are ethnically French. And so they view themselves as a kind of colonized people, which is kind of glues the people there together. And thus they have a kind of philosophy that runs up against and clashes with the kind of individualistic neoliberal policies that have come from Ottawa and come from their factotums in the Quebec Parliament. And so we see more because the people there feel more oppressed comparatively. And that's why we saw Quebec having half the tuition fees of the rest of Canada and more of a social safety net because they're more socialistic, because the people there view themselves as oppressed, as having been dictated to by the federal government in Ottawa, having been hard done by in comparison, say, to Alberta, where I am, which is a highly English province. And so this goes back to the history of Canada as a colonial entity. And the people of Quebec are hoping that they may pursue policies in the future that are more in the interest of the Quebecois people, rather than serving the interests of a kind of supranational capitalist class. Obviously, Canada is highly rich in resources, so you have a very small population in Quebec of just 7 million people, and all these resources, gas and oil and diamonds and hydroelectric power. And the people of Quebec would say, well, why can't the people of Quebec enjoy the fruits of those resources rather than having the profit purloined by a transnational capitalist class?
All right. Well, thank you so much for that update from Calgary, Joshua Blakeney, Press TV's correspondent. Well, a sigh of relief for Greece. Now, the debt-stricken country's major lenders say they want Athens to remain in the Eurozone.